centuries, humankind has been consumed with traveling the furthest and the fastest. Man has traveled over 55 million kilometers away from the planet. But in the quiet town of Carletonville in South Africa, not far from Johannesburg, engineers, scientists, and geologists have traveled deeper than any other men below the surface of the Earth. This cement tower houses the entrance to the deepest working mine on the planet, a complex megastructure where the Earth is the enemy and gold is the prize. It is a mining matrix built over 3.6 kilometers or 2.2 miles underground. A place called Tona, City of Gold. Tona is in the area of South Africa that has produced over half of all the gold that man has ever mined. Carletonville is a very quiet town, on the surface anyway. Below it, more than 25,000 people are working underground at any given time. A bit like a massive human ant farm. Tona operates at 3.6 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. 48 years ago, no one would have believed it possible that miners would be able to work underground at such remarkable depths. Scientists knew what men would have to deal with in space, but going this far into the Earth was a different kind of adventure. It all began one morning in 1886, when a wandering Australian prospector named George Walker discovered a rocky outcrop and realized that it contained gold. He had no idea that he was standing above the Earth's richest gold reef, and that his discovery would lead to one of the greatest gold rushes of all time. Prospectors poured into the area, desperately clamoring for their piece of the dream. The story of gold mining in South Africa had begun, and Johannesburg became a thriving, sophisticated city. A city built on underground riches that had been laid down deep below the Earth's surface more than 2.5 million years ago. By the early 40s, the hunger for gold had increased, but prospectors faced major problems. The gold reef extending from Johannesburg past Carletonville didn't lie close to the Earth's surface. It appeared to dive into the Earth at a steep angle. Engineers realized that the only way to mine the ore would be to chase it on its way down. It was time to call in the scientists, and the real work began. There were no swift solutions. It took 15 years of geological surveys and vast fortunes to solve this problem. Engineers finally agreed that it was possible to sink a shaft and then to blast tunnels. In 1957, the main shaft of Tona was sunk. The journey down under was fraught with obstacles. Engineers coped with underground earthquakes. They drilled through pockets of lethal gas, scorching temperatures, and millions of gallons of pressurized water. The end result? The main shaft of almost 2 kilometers deep. No mechanism was available to take men to the required depth of 3.6 kilometers in one journey. So a second and third shaft were built to carry workers to the deepest place in Tona, known as 120 level. Heine van Staden is Tona's production manager. He believes that the design of the mine was visionary and the men involved in it unique.
Oh, they were pioneers, they were my heroes. It was a giant leap for mankind at the time. I still take my hat off to those guys, and the fact that we, after 43 years, can still mine this mine very effectively says a lot for the good work that those guys did.
But sinking the shafts was only the first of the challenges. Next on the list was creating an environment where men were able to breathe and work in reasonable temperatures so far underground. When Tona's first shaft was sunk, skeptics thought that it would be virtually impossible to circulate air through the maze of tunnels. Without ventilation, there could be no deep-level mining. Once again, engineers set to work, designing a highly effective ventilation system that is still in operation today. Richard Mack and his team are the engineers responsible for breathing life into Tona. It's simple, really. A series of enormous fans above and below the ground suck vast amounts of fresh air into the mine. Extractor fans push the air out again. Underground booster fans like this one assist in pushing the air through over 800 kilometers or 500 miles of tunneling. Engineers seldom come into the fan rooms on their own. You have to be solid and steady on your feet to stay upright in here. The wind velocity is powerful enough to blow a 120-pound person right over. Every step feels like a fight against a gale-force wind. And if you're looking for some facts to blow your hair back, how about this? In engineering speak, the system extracts 900 cubic meters of air per second from the steamy hot tunnels. And if that doesn't mean much to you, it's equal to moving the air out of your living room 16 times in just 1 second. It's so humid in the fan rooms, it feels like a giant sauna. And Richard reckons the noise is more deafening than front row at a rock concert. With all this engineering skill, you'd think they'd design hard hats that could stay on. Richard and his guys are used to the punishing environment, but the cameras used to film this weren't. They shut down twice as a result of the intense heat and humidity. Just opening and closing one of the doors feels like fighting a tornado. Any engineer venturing here on his own risks getting trapped inside one of these wind tunnels. But ventilating the mine doesn't solve the cooling problem. Virgin rock temperature down here is 55 degrees Celsius. That's 131 degrees Fahrenheit. The closer you get to the molten center of the Earth, the hotter it gets. The air here must be chilled to a bearable 28 degrees Celsius. And what's the answer to hot stuff? Fridges, of course. The mine has installed gigantic refrigeration plants with the cooling power of over 120,000 domestic refrigerators. That's equal to making 16,000 tons of ice per day. The system is effective, but needs constant maintenance, and these engineers can never afford to lose their cool. With all these endless environmental obstacles, many mining experts believe that working at these levels that these guys have reached is just too dangerous. The team at Tona has accepted the risk. They are led by mine manager Robbie Lazar, a man who believes that running this megastructure is not a job, but a way of life.
Mining at the depth that we are mining is an achievement on its own. That's unknown territory. Nobody has mined at that depth before. The risk is real for the people working underground.
Earthquakes, scorching temperatures, and the constant threat of underground fires are daily threats. But this megastructure and its team seem to have a plan of action for all of them. Tona mine is the deepest working mine in the world. Below ground, war is waged against the planet every day, with underground earthquakes, soaring temperatures, and lack of air just some of the challenges of deep-level mining. The movements of the Earth threaten to destroy 50 years of engineering triumph daily, and mining a treacherous 3.6 kilometers below the surface of the Earth is a major feat. In 1977, the Guinness Book of Records declared Tona to be the deepest working mine in the world. The mine is made up of over 800 kilometers or 500 miles of tunneling, which branch out in all directions from the central shaft, much like the roots of a tree. If you are having trouble imagining a depth of 3.6 kilometers, think of it this way. It's the same distance as over 9 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. This narrow structure is the main shaft, the one that was dug in the 1950s, and all of Tona's activities center around it. It is used to get in and out of the mine. People, equipment, and the mined ore are transported using this one vertical passage. Large metal cages are used to take miners down the shaft. The cages hold up to 40 people and are the fastest of their kind on the planet. They travel a frightening 16 meters per second. The cages are controlled by a complex winder system, operated by winder drivers. When you first travel in one of these speeding cages, it feels more like an amusement park ride than an elevator, as you drop almost 2 kilometers on the end of a steel rope. Just to give you an idea of how scary that speed really is, we cut a hole in the floor of one of the cages and put a camera in it. And here we go. A real-time ride in the fastest industrial elevator in the world. Don't be fooled by the optical illusion. This elevator is heading straight down. The ropes of the main shaft cages are 2,100 meters long and weigh 21.5 tons each. They are made of woven steel and can hold up to 126 tons. Just one small fault in one of the ropes could lead to disaster. The ropes are electromagnetically tested on a monthly basis, and if the smallest fault is detected, the rope is changed. A job that takes 40 hours and 15 men. The chance of the rope breaking is extremely slim, but even the remotest possibility is still a great threat. Every week, shaft inspections take place. Maintaining this backbone of Tona is an ongoing responsibility. If you don't have a head for heights, this is certainly not a job for you. With over a 3,000-meter drop below them, these men must be harnessed to the cages. In winter, the wind chill factor with the air being pulled into the mine reaches -10 degrees Celsius in here. Tona has never experienced a large-scale cage accident, but at a nearby mine in 1995, 105 people were killed as a locomotive crashed through the safety devices and struck a cage full of people, which fell 2 kilometers down the shaft. Locomotives are an integral part of mine transport and are carried down the mine using a technique called slinging. Slinging is a complex technique whereby large equipment is hung underneath a cage and lowered down the shaft. Safety regulations and thorough rope inspections have become a rigidly enforced practice. Mine work is dangerous and tough. Let's take a look at what is required to be a miner at Tona. The name of the mine means Great Lion, and the people who work here believe that you must have the heart of a lion to do this job. If you want to work with Solomon Moketsi, set your alarm for around 3 a.m. First stop is the change room where you suit up for the day ahead. Then it's off to collect your methane monitor. Methane can cause underground fires and explosions, so being aware of its presence is a must. Once that's done, it's time to head for the shaft. Wait your turn and prepare for the cage ride down.
How are you?
Today, Solomon and his team are working at one of the deepest points in the mine. The journey down the 3 shafts can take more than an hour, and when they get to the bottom, they have about a 3-kilometer walk to the stope face, or working area. Before he gets going, Solomon checks the methane levels and heads out. This is no walk in the park. The rock face is as jagged as glass, and the shape and angle of the tunnel change constantly. As the workers get nearer to the stope face, the temperature and humidity start to rise. For many miners, the journey to and from the gold seam takes 4 hours every day, a longer commute than that of most city dwellers around the world. In some cases, they're able to travel to their destination in locomotives, just like the tubes or metros really, giving new meaning to the term underground. By the time the miners reach their destination, temperatures have reached around 28 degrees Celsius, and the steamy humidity is definitely at sauna levels. On arrival, some will collect explosives if they're blasters like Solomon. 5 tons of explosives are used in this mine every day. Other miners collect their drills and picks, and it's only now that the tough stuff begins. With 3.6 kilometers of earth above them, the natural pressure on the rock down here is about 9,700 tons per square meter. And if that's not enough pressure for a working guy, the stope area closes on average about 7 millimeters every day, until it eventually collapses. The stope face is extremely narrow, sometimes as narrow as 90 centimeters. That's under 3 feet. That means crawling into a small dark space where you're likely to stay for the next 8 hours.
And they're a tough bunch of people. It's not for sissies. The conditions are harsh. If you are a guy who don't like to get your hands dirty, hey, please get an office job. The guys that work underground are tough guys.
With such harsh conditions underground, heat stroke and dehydration are always a threat at these depths. Medical teams are on standby to treat miners who are in distress, like this man from 100 level, who had to be rushed to the surface after succumbing to severe heat exhaustion. The closer miners get to the core of the earth, the hotter it gets.
I can tell you now that it takes a certain breed of person to go down this mine, work for 9 hours, sometimes even more, and go out and come back the next day. Because he's a guy who knows he's got a call, he's got targets, he's got to work safely, he's got to think on his feet, he works on a tight schedule, there's always production pressure on him, the environmental conditions are not always on his side. He's got to travel very far, he's got to work in small spaces.
Definitely not your average 9 to 5. Water and air are the lifeblood of Tona. Getting water into the mine, as well as purifying it, is a job for the turbo engineers. Water is used in the mine to do everything from cooling the air to quenching the thirst of everyone down here. The mine circulates and pumps 500 million litres or 137 million gallons of water every month. The water is purified chemically and recycled and reused whenever possible. While water is a positive force in many ways, it has also proven to be one of the mine's greatest threats, and a serious concern for Peter van Zyl, the rock geologist at Tona. Tracking underground water is part of his job. The mine's progress is updated on a daily basis using the latest CAD/CAM technology. It's hard to imagine that before technology was available, daily plans were drawn up by hand so that geologists could study the geological features found underground and plan where they would be tunneling next. Tunneling through the earth, miners often intersect giant underground water features, or aquifers as they are called, many containing enormous amounts of pressurized and extremely hot water. These men are checking that the pressure from a large aquifer on the other side of this rock face is under control. Most features are manageable. Some, like one discovered 2 years ago, had a flow rate of 189,000 litres per hour. The geologists had to seal the hole and are still not sure just how much water is behind that wall of rock. It's very unlikely, but if that water was to burst into the mine, there's no pump big enough to get it out. The geologist's role is to carefully monitor these water features and to relay the information to the engineers who can plot the growing tunnels around these geological obstacles. Today, Peter is checking on an area where the temperature is 34 degrees saturated. Workers are only allowed here for strictly controlled time periods, as heat stroke can set in within minutes. This jet of water may not look like much, but it is extremely hot, under enormous pressure, and there could be millions more litres where this comes from. The geologist's task is an important one, a role that protects the lives of people like Solomon who work underground every day. It's the end of another day for Solomon in the deepest working mine in the world. For now, the water is under control, air is circulating well, and there are no earthquakes. At the moment, anyway. Movements of the earth are what all miners dread, but have to be prepared for.
One of the biggest issues in terms of deep level mining is the behavior of the rock. Seismicity, or as people would know it as type of earthquakes underground at Tona. We would have about 10 of them every day.
With up to 10 earthquakes a day, seismicity is definitely the biggest threat to the mine. Apart from crushing workers in the tunnels, underground earthquakes can result in hundreds of miners being trapped. Seismic activity is closely monitored by geophones, implanted deep into the rock face. The geophones conduct data to the monitoring plants, and this information is interpreted on a continuous basis. But even with the latest technology, scientists are still unable to plot with 100% accuracy when a shift will take place.
A seismic event is when we mine underground, we disturb the natural balances, the natural stresses that is inherent in the ground. And the moment we start removing ground, we disturb those balances. We place more stresses on areas that hasn't been removed. And what happens then is that the inherent faults and dikes, the slips and the fractures that are underground, they now shift, they move, and that causes the seismic events. You know, you can be a hero for a month and then be, have a disastrous month the next month. The challenges are technical. It is sustainability, it is earth movements, the seismic events, and keeping a steady stream of tons flowing out of this mine.
Tona processes over 140,000 tons of ore every month in order to yield just 1.6 tons of gold. And this ore yields more than most. The reef that Tona mines has an incredibly high concentration of gold and is therefore regarded as one of the richest in the world. The ore is transported out of the mine using a complex system of hoppers, locos, and conveyors. Hard to imagine that this dull grey rock contains one of the world's most sought-after commodities. Tona is one of the few mines in South Africa that is productive enough to remain open in spite of economic pressures. Science, technology, and a great deal of skill are at the core of the mine's success. Tona has already exceeded all expectations, and in spite of all the logistical threats it faces, it's a megastructure with a future. It may be efficient, but when the planet is your business partner, be prepared for some earth-shattering action. Tona mine is the deepest working mine in the world. It is a complex matrix of tunnels, an exercise in logistical and engineering precision. The dangers of working 3.6 kilometers below the surface are immense. Seismic activity threatens to destroy 50 years of work every day. Mining at these levels is a dangerous business, but this megastructure is built to survive. Mining at the depths Tona has reached is very different from any other form of mineral excavation. The reason why this mine operates so far below the surface of the Earth is because of the angle at which the gold reef descends. Not only does the reef lie at a very steep angle, it is only 25 centimeters thick. That's very thin by gold reef standards. It's hard to believe that all the fuss is about this thin strip of dull grey rock. As a result of the gold seam being so narrow, the working areas underground at Tona are one of the smallest in the world, making the miner's job even more difficult. When you're this far underground, excavations must be kept as small as possible, and large machinery simply can't be used. Where space is not a problem, monster machines can be used to great effect. Mponeng is Tona's neighboring mine, where they use a completely different mining method. It's called trackless mining, and machines like these are commonplace. Unlike Tona, the excavations are large with plenty of room for monster machines to maneuver. Although the miners are the machines that drive Tona, the mine is still a hungry consumer of electricity, with a monthly power bill exceeding $1 million. Tona has on standby a jet engine-driven emergency turbine, which can supply the most important facilities like the main winders long enough to evacuate the miners in a total blackout. But losing power is not the engineer's greatest concern. As they dig deeper and further, it's Mother Nature's reactions that cause the real danger. Seismic events or underground earthquakes are a constant risk. It's not uncommon for Tona to experience up to 10 earthquakes a day. The movement of the earth is experienced underground as a shake and a hollow bang. That was the real thing. May not seem like much, but even the smallest seismic event has the power to collapse an entire working area. Let's see that again. The sound you just heard is literally the cracking of the earth as pressure is released.
Seismicity is a part of our life. I mean, in the 25 years that I've been in the mines, I've seen a lot of it. I've experienced a lot of it. I've physically been inside some of those events. I actually saw a rock face bursting. When I turned around and I looked at the face, which was very close to me, it was like it exploded. I remember the sound also that it made, and the dust and the fine dirt or broken ground that shot from the face. I remember how the people ran in fear. The area that we've been just 30 minutes before was totally closed. In fact, the area where I sat, there were major big rocks on top of it. And we were extremely lucky to come out of it alive.
It takes a special breed to survive underground, and that doesn't only apply to the miners. Amazingly, in spite of all the dangers, Tona has an underground ecosystem of its own. The primary inhabitants, apart from humans, are rats and cockroaches. Miners are used to them. They eat whatever they can find, including the food that miners bring underground, which is an energy pack called Morvite. There's no time or place for neat little lunch pails here, but the rats don't mind. In fact, the miners have come to use these rodents as their own seismic monitors. Miners believe that they're able to detect seismic activity, and that rodents' own survival instinct leads them away from danger. It's a rat race that the miners are happy to join. As the tunnels are blasted, supports must be put in place to prevent the rock above them from collapsing. The pressure down here is around 970 kilograms per square centimetre. That's almost 1 ton of pressure on an area the size of a stiletto heel. Supporting the tunnels is an ongoing priority. Amazingly, this job was done effectively by timber packs for years. But the timber dried out over time and became a serious fire hazard, sometimes combusting spontaneously.
You would find hundreds of thousands of tons of timber underground because you don't take it out. You can't take it out. Once you use it as a support, you actually leave it there. Now, over the years, in terms of the temperatures that we've got here on the mines, that timber becomes totally dry and it comes like a powder. It's easier to light that wood than it is to light a piece of paper.
We do not fully understand it yet, but I have seen timber underground catch a light with no electricity, no spark, chemical ignition. Until I've seen that, I never really believed that it could happen. Because remember, fire underground is not about the flames, it's about the gases. And because we have very limited ventilation, we cannot afford the ventilation to be poisoned by monoxide and dioxide gas.
The mine is phasing out the use of timber packs for support in favour of newer technology called backfill. Backfill is fast becoming a necessity in deep-level mining. The best support for the earth seems to be the earth itself. They're using the waste from the gold extraction process, the stuff that's left behind once the rock has been crushed and the ore extracted. It's a mushy grey substance, liquid rock really, called tailings. The tailings are pumped into a holding facility known as the slimes dams above ground. Some of this waste is sent to the backfill plant, and then it's pumped underground into 50-metre-long bags. These backfill bags provide a flexible rock support system that is far superior to wood. Backfill gives way slightly to the pressures of the rock and cannot snap or crumble like wood does. And most important of all, it can't be set alight.
Deep-level mining without backfill, I mean, I cannot even imagine it. We cannot mine this mine without backfill. It is a very, very effective support system.
But even with new technology in place, the mine has to be prepared for disaster. Danger is unavoidable, and every worker must be ready for the worst.
I've had some tragic events. You get to stages where you These are my last seconds on Earth.
The mine trains an elite group of men who form proto-teams, the teams who are responsible for saving lives and sometimes for recovering bodies. Farney was in the proto-team for almost 7 years and has experienced rescue missions firsthand.
When you go underground in an emergency situation, especially when you go into breathing apparatus, you work under extreme physical stress, high temperatures, zero visibility sometimes. You work in a team, you have to very often do emergency work very quickly. I have no doubt that our proto teams are the best trained fire brigadesmen in the world.
When an accident occurs, the proto teams are sent in to create a stable environment for the rescuers who follow. Their role is to assess and detoxify the environment and to fight fires. This often means creating new airways to expel gases and fumes and getting air to trap miners if possible. It's the proto teams who communicate with everyone above the ground, and decisions are made based on their advice. The proto teams receive intense training in situations where disasters are simulated. They are forced to endure heat, toxic atmospheres, and fire. Tona's proto teams have a reputation for being amongst the finest in the industry and have been sent to other mines to assist when underground earthquakes and natural disasters have struck. Fatalities at Tona are unavoidable. The mine deals with about 5 deaths every year, but it has not to date had a large-scale incident. Accidents are an inevitable part of the deep mining environment, and dealing with fatalities is the toughest part of the job.
I think the biggest shock is the loss of some of the colleagues on the mine. Years ago, I had to go to the family at home and to go tell the wife that your husband died in a mine accident underground. It's not a nice experience. We would like to have no fatalities at this mine. That's what our ultimate aim is. And in 2002, we nearly got it right. We only had 1 fatality on the mine. It was still 1 too many, but we nearly got it right.
Staying calm in the face of danger is something that everyone at Tona is used to. At 2 o'clock on this apparently quiet afternoon, a large seismic shift measuring 3.1 on the Richter scale occurred. It hit when a full shift was underground. This seismic shift is one of the largest that Tona has ever experienced. This might look like just another day at the office, but this is the kind of event that disasters are made of. The team has been able to identify how big and roughly where the shift occurred, but the quake has knocked out all their electricity and their communication systems. They cannot communicate with anyone underground. All they can do now is wait and hope that Richard can get the electricity up again.
This place really went rock and roll. I mean, it shook.
It's been 2 hours and still no word from underground. Proto teams have already been sent down the shaft, expecting the worst, while the rest of the mine waits for news from underground. Still no word from the proto teams. The electricity is up and running again. This means that the ventilation and cooling are back online. The communication systems are now working, and word spreads that even though the seismic shift was enormous, not one person was injured. A mining miracle if ever there was one. Today, tragedy was avoided. This was a headache, but certainly not a headline. Following the close call, Robbie decides to lead a safety inspection throughout the mine. It will be a long night. Everyone is relieved to see the damage was minimal. This kind of situation is not new. Many of these men have been miners for decades. Tona has won many seismic battles in the past, but ensuring safety this far underground is an ongoing war. Miners need to know that the risks are shared. These are men who believe in the power of action over words. Today has been tougher than most. It's important to keep up the morale of the guys who are going on shift. Those who aren't underground will sleep soundly tonight. For the miners on shift, it's business as usual. The gold diggers have targets to meet, and it's important for everyone to stay on track. Soon, work will begin on Tona's new twin shafts, taking miners even further into the earth, below the current deepest 120 level. The Great Lion may have been challenged today, but he continues to lay claim to his domain. A domain that will soon include dark places never before visited by man. Tona will soon be breaking new ground. Tona is the world's deepest working gold mine, an underground matrix made up of over 800 kilometers of tunneling. This African megastructure was designed by visionary engineers and scientists over 4 decades ago and is the workplace of almost 5,000 people, all of whom fight the elements every day as they work 3.6 kilometers below the Earth's surface. In spite of constant dangers, Tona will soon be taking deep-level mining to new extremes. Tona is only 70 kilometers west of probably the most powerful commercial center in Africa, Johannesburg. The city has a population of over 3.2 million people and is aptly named Igoli, or Place of Gold. Without gold mines like Tona, this thriving city would not exist. Johannesburg owes its heritage to those early prospectors and gold miners who risked their all. The city may not be paved with gold, but it is certainly built on it. Johannesburg is South Africa's main business centre, a place where the mining magnates of the past made their fortunes and built an industry that employs over 190,000 people. George Walker's early discovery took men to places they had never dreamt of. His prospecting methods were simple, but once the magnitude of his discovery was understood, engineers and scientists soon replaced the tools of the lone prospector. Tona may be the deepest working mine on the planet, but it has barely scratched the surface of the Earth's crust, which on average is around 35 kilometers thick. The journey from crust to core is a staggering 6,400 kilometers. Tona's creators were driven down into the depths of the earth, fueled by an appetite for gold and fired by the determination to venture into unknown territory. The gold seam that those early engineers were so determined to chase is still a rich resource. Soon, the mine will initiate an expansion program. A new shaft will be sunk, and the men of Tona will be working at level 128, an astounding 3,726 meters beneath the Earth's surface.
Mining is a breaking operation. We continuously mine forward and open up new ground, boldly going down where no man has gone before.
When the mine was first opened, its life expectancy was 49 years. But the expansion program will add another 10 years to the great mine's life and keep the gold pouring in. Many gold mines in South Africa have closed due to the economic realities of an unspectacular gold price. Tona, however, is looking forward to a healthy future. Burrowing deep below the Earth's surface is risky business. If it were not for the promise of vast fortunes, underground adventures would certainly hold little appeal. Humans have always been fascinated by the idea of getting closer to the stars, but going underground has never had the same attraction. Gold, as it happens, is a critical component in space technology. It seems that even reaching for the stars requires the Midas touch. For miners at Tona, gold is simply a commodity, but for most people, solid gold is the thing of fairy tales. It is associated with riches and glamour, the athlete's ultimate prize. Only a tiny percentage of an Olympic gold medal is actually gold, and yet it takes around half a ton of ore to produce the 6 grams of gold in just one of the prized medals, and more than 1 ton of rock to create a solid gold wedding band. Small wonder that going for gold means so much.
There's so many things against success, but yet the human spirit is the one thing that pulls this mining industry through, and especially the people of this mine.
The engineers and scientists who created the Great Line have won a race of their own. Their prize has become an engineering landmark. Tona is a mighty megastructure with a great history and a rich future. A city of gold where men push the boundaries of science and continue to fearlessly challenge nature itself.